show, Willows Spend. So tonight we are covering 3 different topics, and I will give a little explanation before we dive into it for anybody who might be new to watching the show or through YouTube perhaps, who haven't heard the explanation yet. So I had lost my original archives, the first just almost 2.5 years worth of shows. And the main people in my Willows Ben group on Facebook decided they really missed having those and wanted to have them back again to access as they wanted to back and explore a topic or learn about it, whatever. So I'm recovering those topics so that they will now be archived through Soma Fusion and not solely on Facebook. Should Facebook get wild hair up its backside and decide to do away with them, there will be another record kept with Soma Fusion and on YouTube. So that said, I am going back over and covering older topics. At some point they choose to have newer ones covered, we'll do it, of course. But so tonight we are covering near-death experiences and portals and black-eyed children of what's known of them. So I also monitor the chat from my Facebook group, the Willows End. So if you see me looking there, that is what I'm doing. So any chat, any comment anyone makes anywhere will show up there for me. So a lot of them can be a little bit technologically challenged with getting over to YouTube, so it's just easier. So I'm gonna wait for the feed to open up in here. There we are. And come down and pop that open. See if anybody's here yet. No one's here. Nope, they are here yet. Hi, Sandy and Tanya, my lovelies, and Kim. Happy Singles Awareness Day. Happy Valentine's Day, whichever the case may be for you. Go. What am I doing now? Let's see here. Hey, Marianne. What am I after here? Welcome back, Sandy. My ashes fall all over me. Hey, Dad. Welcome, of course. Happy Valentine's Day again to you. So I'm going to go ahead and do the sage blessing, even though not everyone's here yet. That's okay. Hey, Mary. It'll still cover anybody as they come in or watch during the replay the way I do it. So it works. Let's see here. Light it up. Okay. So with this sage, I cast a circle of protection around everybody watching in tonight's show live and anyone watching outside of Facebook as well. And for anyone who catches the replay and sees it recorded elsewhere, posted elsewhere, may that protection protect them from any ill will or harm and follow them outside of the show as well into your personal lives and keep you safe and well there also. Hi, Chris and Karen. So with that said, so I will it. So Mo to be. I got a little distracted myself there for a second. There we go. How are my lovelies? You just got here and you're leaving already, Karen. Wow. I'm just saying. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? Just put it out there, Donna. If that's any sign of things to come for doing tonight's show, there's going to be problems. So more to be, so mo to be, either way. Good old autocorrect. The drunk autocorrect guy. Damn work. You know, tell them it's Willow's bedtime and they're just going to have to wait, and that's the way it is. Think it would work? Probably not. Taking that out of the notebook would probably be helpful. And hiding it from little girl who loves stealing my legal size rubber bands and demolishing them. And that literally is the last one I have left from her. She's not getting it. I don't care. I am doing okay, Chris. Reasonably okay. You know, could be worse. Always could be worse. There was something I was going to say to you guys too. Oh, as a possible heads up, it's not here yet, but in case it does get here, and I will let you know, of course, as soon as I know that exactly, Karen, they can wait. It's Willow's bedtime after all. Um, we may need to shift the book group night over, but I will let you guys know in a second. I know if we do need to do that, and of course, figure out which is the best night to go forward with it from there. It's just something that might be necessary, but I will let you know, of course. So I know everyone's programmed that it is on a Wednesday night. If there's any way around that, then I will obviously leave it where it is. Hey, Miss Sandy. How are you, lovely? That's right. They can wait on their meds, you know. Good, because you're off on Thursday. Yeah, no, I mean, well, you still always, even if you're off the next day, Mary, I've noticed you still leave at the same time every night because you're tired anyway, and you're kind of programmed to go to bed at a certain time. So even if you're not, whether you're working or you're not working, you still always leave about the same time every night for book group. It's kind of funny. Yes, I do know you're good with any night. And again, if something does change, obviously you guys know as soon as I know, but it's just something that might happen. But I'm giving you guys a pre heads up in case that occurs. But yeah, hopefully it'll just kind of stay where it is, be easier for everybody to remember, but you know. So tonight we are going to be talking about near-death experiences and black-eyed children and what is known about them, and portals and what is known about them. There's not a lot of information out there about black-eyed children because it is solely based on personal reports of personal experiences, which are not super common when they happen. So they're kind of spread out everywhere, and no viable solution has been offered yet as to exactly what they are. So it's all speculation. That said, it is an interesting topic nonetheless. So, why don't we, do you know which book we're doing first? It would be the, somebody just asked me that before. I think it might have been Mary. I think wasn't it like the Now World or something, whatever that was called? Is the first one out of the two. They both were written by the same author, so they're going to contain some crossover information between the two of them. But if it wasn't the Now, I can't see the damn headline from here, or the title of the cover. Children of the Fifth World is called. Sorry, I don't remember the title of the second one, but I think that's the first one. I think I can grab them. Know the other one, so I have them backwards. Chris knows. I just have them stacked together, but I can get them in here and tell you real quick for anybody who does want to order them. And at least, you know, they're quite affordable. It was like, I don't know, $6 used. Let me see. Oh, we got almost within reach. Children of the Fifth World and Children of Now. So I wasn't too far from the one title. I will look. No, they are by different people. Okay. I could have swore they both were by the same person, but they are not. So interesting. I didn't realize that. Oh no, that's okay. I mean, I didn't. Bless Karen's heart, she gets the books for book group for me. Overall, I want to say it's the Children of the Fifth World is the first one, but I can double check publishing dates. But one took it much more from a kind of including clinical stuff into it more so than the other one did. So the Fifth World one came out in 2012, and the other is published, the Children of Now is published in 2007. So this would be the first. The Children of Now is the first book that we'd be reading. Let me get the glare off of it for you. So this is the first one. That's the older one. And I figured we may as well start there first. And that's by Dr. Meg Blackburn Losey. So if that helps at all, hopefully. Yeah, I think anybody would freak out upon seeing the black-eyed children, and most do. And thankfully, most don't invite them into their house and say, come on in, like they want to be. But we're going to start out first with near-death experiences simply because they are first in my notebook. No other reason. So, oh, you're very welcome. I wasn't clear on it myself as to which one came first because they just were unwrapped and stacked on, over there off to the side till we were ready for them. So, near-death experiences. And I know there are some of you in chat who have had a near-death experience. Whilst I have had near-death experience, there wasn't anything I saw or that occurred extra, like some people do report, and not everyone does. And I don't know what differentiates it from other people, that those who do and those who don't have a full-on, like, of experiencing things, that is, when they're going through that. Some people experience a whole lot when they're in the middle of that, are you going to live or not through this? Others don't. So I'm not sure why or what accounts for the differences. Science is still trying to really explain this in everything from oxygen shortage to like putting too much stress on the dying brain to the body's neurochemical response to trauma. However, it is being taken more seriously now than it once was, because they can't otherwise explain how those who do report experiencing something, whether it's, being aware of hearing what's being said, or, hi, Terry, floating above their bodies, whatever, that they are verbatim reporting what got said while they were in that place of in between death and life, or clinically dead even. They have also expanded the period of time that the human brain is thought to hold on to some form of consciousness when it is deprived of oxygen. So once, like, the heart stopped beating and so forth, it was thought before you used to have 4 to 6 minutes to survive something without oxygen. Now they're going outward to say a good 10 minutes that the brain remains active after being deprived of oxygen before shutdown fully happens. So, it is being looked into more and studied more, but there are still, there's always going to be those that negate it in the scientific community as being anything. However, like, most of those that do negate it just say it's misfiring of the nerves in the brain or whatever, the synapses. But those that are looking into it further, they're saying, they're even studying like what potentially is the core place in the brain that human consciousness comes from. That's also being looked at closer now than ever before. So interesting. I don't think you're going to find it per se, but it's being looked into. So, hey, Renee. Okay, so those that do try to explain it away, it's everything from oxygen shortages to on the stress brain or the dying brain, to the body's neurochemical response to trauma of, having the heart stop beating. But experiences of near-death experiences, the reasons for those being explanations for why someone is experiencing those things, it kind of falls short, because again, things get reported as accurately by the people having the experience that they can't otherwise account for. Everything from when they were having a near-death experience, they saw something located outside a windowsill 10 stories up in the hospital, and their room was down on the 6th floor or something. They can't see above them unless they're outside, and it's only visible from the outside of the hospital grounds, but at a certain vantage point to see it. Otherwise, you can't see it. And they reported it being there, and when checked, that object was outside the person's window on the 10th floor. So you you can't just explain those types of things away. So recent published experiences by two doctors who had actual near-death experiences was one Dr. Mary Neal, who at the time was director of the spinal surgery at Southern California, and Eben Alexander, who practiced and taught neurosurgery at Harvard. They were examined, I kind of examined his own chart and concluded that his coma was so deep and his brain was so completely shut down that it was indeed had to have been his soul that must have left his body. Now, for a medical person of science to come out and publicly say that, that's huge. They don't go around just like throwing that out there lightly because of what their peers would do to them and chew them up and spit them out in the public eye for doing so. But they both went on to both be published within many journals in addition to writing their own books about it as well with their experiences. Hey, Miss Beautiful Natalie, how are you? So, after an experience, many people notice changes that occur in like their lives with their senses and their viewpoint and stuff on how they carry themselves differently for having gone through the experience. So some of those changes include being like having a sensitivity to light, sound, as well as certain chemicals. They become more caring and generous people. They take things less for granted, um, and placing value on the important things in life. Oh, thank you, Natalie. You're sweet. They have trouble with timekeeping because, we've talked a lot about it, how time is more fluid on the other side. And yet, we're like the only beings that kind of count it on a linear timeline that runs horizontally. And so they have trouble keeping track of the linear view of time. It just like they can't seem to do it anymore. They have trouble with finances and keeping track of their finances. They feel unconditional love for everyone, and they have a strange influence on electrical equipment after having had their experience. And the oldest known description of a near death experience was written by an 18th century French military doctor. Um, so it goes back quite a ways as being documented. And of course, even in Egyptian times, there was a full process done to accommodate what happens with the soul after the brain dies. So, of course, they intentionally pulled the brain out through the nostrils of the person, but that's a whole nother story there. There was still that thought process that there's consciousness that continues after death. But this is the first time someone was in the Western medicine view of things went public with it. Newer studies occur with some researchers interviewing someone while they're still in the hospital as near to right after the event as possible, and what they can recount is checked against their medical team. Uh-oh, my view just switched, but I'm still active, I think. Okay, that was weird. My camera just kind of switched screens here. Come on, there we go. Hopefully there wasn't a blip on you guys' end. I was telling you, not Sansi. Drunk autocorrect people that live in our devices. So now that they're kind of starting to interview the person who had the near death experience as soon as possible after they have it, that they kind of regain consciousness, of course, and then they kind of go against like their medical their chart. They talk to their care providers who are involved in the crisis, while they're going through the near death experience, to see if there's anything that could account for or explain the experience. And that, anybody, it's kind of common sense. If you talk to someone sooner after an event happens rather than well after the fact, you're going to remember more details about it. So that's what they're trying to do. And they have kind of like a staff, I think it's done by like the social workers. Every hospital has its own social worker assigned to it that's there to kind of help to provide therapy to people as needed, etc. And so that's usually the one who is interviewing the person to get information on it. And they kind of agreed to participate in a study of that. So and that's what they're finding. It's easier to get more information right after it happened. So one woman recounted during her near-death experience that during a cardiac arrest that she floated outside of the hospital. Oh, so this is what I was mentioning before. I didn't know it's in the notes, but she described seeing a tennis shoe in extremely accurate detail, and it was so she was on the third story of the hospital, and this tennis shoe, she saw it like outside, sitting outside of the window, but she saw it from the outside of the hospital on the ledge of the outside of the window. And the social worker did go to investigate and determined that there is no other way she could have known that there was a tennis shoe there unless she had seen it for herself firsthand. So, without having viewed it from a certain position outside of the hospital, being kind of like, I think it was like from another rooftop that was, you know, how like sometimes hospitals are built in stages and you have different height buildings that are all attached to one. So it was like, you know, by being on the rooftop of one and looking upward, yes, there was a tennis shoe sitting on the windowsill of a higher floor, but you could only see it from that one vantage point, of which this woman would have had no way of seeing that unless she was outside of the hospital viewing it. So she described it in enough detail to remove any doubt that that is what she saw. Science has a hard time with developing methods to test the validity that can stand up to scrutiny, you know, because by scientific view of things, anything done scientifically, it has to be reproducible results done by anybody conducting the test to end up having the same results for it, have be the outcome. So no matter who's testing it, it's going to come out the same. And that's how science considers something valid or not. So they're having a hard time coming up with a valid form of testing for these things because what people experience vary with each near-death experience. So to come up with a, you know, one set of a box, I guess you'd say, that they fit into, these experiences fit into, you can't really do it because it's going to be influenced by what was going on at the time the person had the near death experience, what caused it, how long it lasted for, etc. So they can't come up with one size fits all. Suffering succotash. Exactly. So nothing much that they've come up with has stood up to the scrutiny as far as like being reproducible, of course. That's right. Drink safely, if nothing else. Um, so much of it comes right down to like silly reasons, like with experiences to not be valid, that they'll look at something and kind of put it off on a, a dumb way of looking at it, that, oh, this can't be valid because, you know, I don't know, that the nurse didn't, she wasn't actually standing facing this direction, she was actually facing this direction, so nope, the person's wrong. But even though they said verbatim what was said during that time when they were trying to be resuscitated, and they could say what tools were on the table being used to help them, what doctor was standing on what side of them, whatever, it didn't matter. They would cite that one little thing to be, well, they're wrong. But they're having a harder and harder time negating these things anymore. So many near death experiences follow the structure of kind of a mono myth or a hero's journey, which is a literary, so like a way of writing a story that is set up in a certain way to where, you know, like I don't know how many have ever read any like Greek or Roman stories, not Roman, but Greek stories having to do with like the hero's journey, where, you know, you get like an everyday average person who faces some massive amount of struggle and strife, but they end up, you know, fighting their way through it to come out being the hero at the end, despite having been tried several times on their path and faced nearly quitting from that. And in the end, they come out on top and having been successful in their journey and grown from the process. So the protagonist gets shaken out of their normal life by some disturbance, Exactly. Closed-minded bastards. They are for looking at it that to negate it because of that one simple thing. So in a hero's journey, the protagonist gets shaken out of their normal, quiet life by some disturbance that happens. And the same can be said that, the person's meandering along and may have a massive heart attack or stroke that ends up causing clinical death for a certain amount of time. Um, they strike out reluctantly on a journey to unfamiliar realm. So many people who have a near-death experience report whether it's seeing a light or encountering certain beings or people who have died before them, that they got to talk to them and send certain messages to them. It's equitable to the hero's journey story. The hero faces tests and battles and withstands a climatic ordeal, teetering on the brink of failure or death for the person, i.e., nearly dying, right? And ultimately returns home, or being victorious, but in some way transformed by the experience. And so a near death experience does that for many people. It's mind exploding for people. They themselves can't necessarily explain what they experienced or why or how. They just know that they did and they're forever changed by it. Even famous people like Orlando Bloom had a near death experience, and he was known in his early 20s, I guess you'd say, for being quite the wild child, daredevil, extreme sporting type of person. So I don't doubt that he had more than one near death experience knowing him, because he would always put himself into those situations that could be perceived as life threatening by many of us, and that we would ourselves, most of us, wouldn't dare even attempt trying to do. He would walk crazily and run into those saying, yeah, let me at it. So there's a higher risk of that stuff happening. So what happens in a near-death experience? Now, each one is different, but the top 10 most reported characteristics of a near-death experience is in 69% of cases, people feel that they're in the presence of overwhelming love, and what form that love may take depends on their belief system. Some people who are from a Christian background may report they saw an angel, or may report of being a light, or of seeing even a Christ figure, if that's their belief system. But it's in the presence of overwhelming love. 65% report the ability to communicate with people or entities with mental telepathy, that they didn't have to talk to be heard or understood, that there's a thought transference. 62% report having a life review where they got shown every single thing that happened in their life, kind of like on a videotape playing on fast forward, where everything's kind of just going by, but they're shown everything, and it's without judgment, but so that they can see even experiences that they may have forgotten about in their life. They get shown those things to kind of take a look at. 56% feel overwhelming joy and love at being free from the bodies and their earthly troubles, which, hella yeah, My aunt had a near-death experience, saw all her deceased relatives standing around her. She said, hell no, I'm not ready. And oftentimes, Chris, they get told the message that it's not their time yet, and they may want to stay, because it's such a state of joy for them and love that they don't want to go back. And yet they're told it's not your time. So they are made to kind of go back. Or you have a job to do yet. 46% felt like they were in the presence of unlimited knowledge. 46% reported afterlife levels, meaning, like they brought some of that joy back with them, that renewed view of letting go of the petty crap that people hold on to in life and worrying about, and focus their lives more on what's really important, which isn't job and money and things. It's people and joy and love. I was told it wasn't my time by my best friend. Had your best friend already crossed over, I take it then, Sandy? So 46% get told that to make a choice whether to stay, or were told that it wasn't their time. Yes. And, so who would you listen to more, I'm guessing, in that situation other than somebody very, very close to you that you trust? Otherwise, you'd be like, yeah, screw that, I'm not going back. 44% of cases of people were given knowledge of their futures or world events that were going to happen. 42% reported experiencing the proverbial tunnel with the light at the end. 56% report meeting God or some other divine being. And the figures were done based on a study by Kevin Williams on reported cases on near-death experiences in the Afterlife website. Yeah, so you would trust that person telling you, hey, dude, not yet. So what people experience is different, but I think that it's safe to say, especially for those people who have them, it's a very profound, life-changing thing, and you proceed with your life after that of never being quite the same again afterward. Like I said, I mean, there have been several times in my life I've nearly died, but I can't honestly say that there was a remembered experience for having died, but I came very close to it several times, but not actually pronounced clinically dead, I would say. Now, a lot of people can't, Sandy, and when you are more introverted most of your life, well, you wouldn't necessarily have a friend for that long. Now you're stuck with us for the remainder of your days, so just you wait, you'll see. We'll outlast that. Okay, so they're at least again considering it now, along with other things that have been stereotypically looked at as metaphysical things that aren't real or absolutely negated outright by science. They're starting to kind of take another look at a lot of them and say, well, maybe there is something to it, whether it's dealing with reincarnation, to the near death experiences, to, is there a soul? Is there a consciousness that exists after death? And so it's a start. I don't think they're going to necessarily ever figure it out and, come up with those answers, but it's a start. They're at least more and more are being more open-minded to them now. Cindy Griffin, I did. My best friend died a few years ago, and we've been friends since elementary school. Wow. See, things like that, I can't imagine, because that's like longer than I've been alive for. So to picture something going that long is kind of mind-blowing to me. But yeah. So that's kind of the near-death experience topic in a nutshell, really, of, everybody's experiences can vary. Not everybody who has a clinical death but is then revived afterward reports having had a near-death experience, but there are definitely those that do. And I think the ones that have carried the most weight are those highly respected medical doctors who are experts in their field and, have a track record for their Western medicine philosophies coming out of the woodwork and coming all the closet, the metaphysical closet, to say, yeah, I experienced this too, and there's something to it. Oh, I imagine after that amount of time of being friends, you would be, yeah. Probably soul family after that long of, to be connected that long. So onward to the topic of portals. So a definition of a portal is first of all, does anybody have any other comments or questions on near-death experience before we move on? I should give you time to do that, right? That'd just be nice to me. Some of my friends are from my childhood, 40 plus years. Some have passed, but the class bond we had from the early days holds strong today. I was talking about that briefly with Bonnie before getting on air tonight, was that how, from back in my high school days, most of that time I spent, and it had been 20 plus years since I'd seen most of those people, I spent the entire night being like, who is that? Who's that? Because I didn't recognize them at all. Or their names didn't really trigger a memory in me. I took care of her too. She had heart problems and diabetes, lost one of her legs, then the other before she passed. That's a sad way to end things, but I'm glad. I'm certainly thinking she was happy to have you in her life and valued it every bit as much as you did. So, any questions on your death experiences at all? Like I said, I mean, there are, of course, a ton of other personal stories on it and so forth, but that's the gist of it, that it's stuff that can't otherwise be explained. And that is the most recent I've heard about it, is that they have extended the time period now that it's thought that the brain's active and aware after clinical death has occurred. As now, instead of being 4 to 6 minutes before permanent and unrepairable brain damage occurs, that the brain can stay, for all intents and purposes, alive and active for 10 minutes after death, and experiencing things. So I don't have any friends like that, just friends during that time when life goes on, homebody here. Well, you have soul family too, Tanya. I did have a couple, but most of them I always had to move and lose them from my life at an early age. Um, Once I came to New York, I had one for like 11 years, but then at that point, I grew up and she didn't, and I was a mom by then. That took my priority over partying and so forth. So I kind of ended the relationship at that point. But yeah, they're special bonds for sure. So, like I said, at least it's a start towards changing perspectives on it, even scientifically, and why everybody puts so much um, importance on what science thinks and feels on things kind of remains beyond me. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get a say in things, but we work so hard to convince science that something is real, yet they don't necessarily have to provide the same evidence to us. I find it unique, and some of us have been able to connect through the years and hold fast. I know most connect with one, but have this connection with so many fascinates me. I feel blessed. Nice. Uh, that's right. She does have us, Tanya. Tanya does, and she just is stuck with us now. Every bit as much as Sandy is. So, all right. Well, then we will move on to the topic of portals. So, the definition of a portal is a doorway, entrance, or gate, especially one that is large and imposing. Absolutely. And it's family, so we're not just friends. So, for spirits and other entities, it's a way for them to enter and return from their own dimensions to and from ours, the physical realm. See more. Science will bring us space and time travel. Science has my respect, but they don't more everything. No, they don't. And, even like Seth says about space, it's not how we view it is not actually how it is, but I don't disrespect science. However, by the same token, I don't resonate with being in that locked in box that some of this stuff dealing with higher consciousness, it can't be reproduced in a lab by anybody on demand. And so it doesn't mean it doesn't exist just because of that. I think that it has its place in time, but, just not the end all be all say all that some people put on science. Science hasn't, I always say, science hasn't pierced the veil of the other side yet completely. And so they don't have much room to definitively say, oh, that absolutely doesn't exist, just because, again, it's not always reproducible results. It's just not the nature of gifts and of higher consciousness. So anyway, so spirit portals can be created from large changes in energy, for example, like geomagnetic locations that exist around the world. There are those places that have a more intense magnetic zone area than other areas have, due to just the lay of the land, ley lines they just have a higher based on their location, the tectonic plate activities below the surface, and so forth, that it creates a higher magnetic field in those areas, and so it's thought that that can impact or open portals for things to cross back and forth through. At one point, science told doctors to use leeches on people. Well, they still do use leeches on people, but not to the same degree they once did. Karen Carter, but they are riding on the coattails of people like us who look at it differently, in my opinion. That's right. We are the trailblazers. That's how I view it. I don't walk on the existing paths. I make my own damn path. So other areas of high energy are also like war zones, where there's a mad amount of death happening and the intensity of just the energy being as intensive as it is in a smaller area, that can pop open portals as well. You kind of have to, or they'd be looked at differently, but they'll catch up. I don't know if they'll ever fully in the same way as, like we view things, but again, it's a start, and a start's better than not starting at all. So, hospitals are another place of high energy, of course, obvious reasons, a lot of life and death, a lot of stress, and with a lot of emotionality, where it's a place where a lot of people have died in, and so forth. People can also create portals, and it's thought that if they have a higher amount of intuition or are psychically gifted, that you can pop open a portal, which by my experiences, yes, that's true. I used to get leeches on playing in the creek in front of our house when I was little. They're just like insidious little things, but they are used for, they used to be used for bloodlettings that would very nearly, drain someone completely of their blood if left unattended, and in high enough number, but they are used for their anticoagulating properties of their saliva to prevent blood clots and such. They're still creepy, but I would imagine most people probably would be by pulling those things off. I've never experienced one myself, and I'm good with that. I've grown up playing in creeks and rivers and things, but I have never had to have a leech, thankfully. So I'm good with that too. I don't need to have that experience in my repertoire. Yes, I've heard that salt makes them fall off. So it's not uncommon for portals to form in places those type of people live, etc., because their energy is concentrated there. So for people who are higher vibrational energy wise, then portals can pop open left and right if it's not controlled and focused correctly. It's not difficult to close them, as long as, again, you know what you're doing, at least intuitively. Even if you've never had any formal training in it, you got to listen to the intuitive side of you to do it appropriately and have it stay closed. In Victorian times, when someone died, all the mirrors in the home were covered for a time to prevent spirits from returning to haunt the home, or even thought that they could get stuck there by having mirrors uncovered, which, as we now know, that's not true. That, don't get stuck because of mirrors. No one acknowledged my cry for help, damn 80s and lack of fucks given. That's what makes us the stronger generation as Gen Xers, is that we kind of raised ourselves in that time space. It was necessary. So things like Ouija boards, pendulums, etc., they're not portals because they aren't doorways. They're only tools to aid in communication. So in and of themselves, they're not a portal. Like, you're not, to use a Ouija board, you're not opening a portal somewhere. I think I went through one Wednesday night. You may have. We did survive most of that, and that just speaks testament to how strong we are and why we're kick-ass. I know I have portals here. My dogs, my son, and I have seen it. What a ride. Yeah, and oftentimes when I'm called in to do remote viewing on someone's home who has activity and you don't know what's there. Um, I've come across interdimensional beings that they may want to go home but don't know how to get back, and I have to make a doorway for them. And so, then I make sure they're aware that once you're through, this door is getting closed and erased, and that's it. Like, you're not going to get back through again. And someone's energy who's a high vibrational person, but the energy isn't kept in check. It's very chaotic in their home environment. There's a high level of chaos because they're not managing their energy through mindful thinking and picking up tools to use them to manage it appropriately. That alone can pop open and create activity in a place and pop open doorways as well. So, I mean, there's activities one can do to manage that, but they have to be willing to put in a little bit of work to it too. Can you go through a portal and your body still be in this realm? Technically, yes. And that would kind of be like astral traveling. Oh, you're very welcome, Natalie. And that's kind of like astral traveling. You're going into many different realms and dimensions while astral travel. I myself, when I'm doing remote viewing, I don't ever go through the doorway myself that I open. I don't know. I just don't. Like, it doesn't even cross my mind to peek my head in to see what it looks like on the other side. I just open it, nudge them through, and then seal it and erase it. So, so spirit traffic, especially in one's home, is often startling, of course, to say the least, when you don't know what you're experiencing. But if a portal is in an area covered with negative energy, it's more likely to attract negative energy beings from different places. It really is more like, what you put out is going to come back through to you. But once you remember, not always, Sandy, it depends on your guides and the impact they thought it might have on your conscious self. They may choose to shield you from it. Mine do. I'm aware of one that I went where I wasn't supposed to on the other side. And if I had the full memory of it, I was told that it would take me off my path now. And so they shield me from seeing it. But the person involved in having to get my ass out of there saw a full view of it, and it kind of like damaged them to have the experience. So, I mean, you can go in places, and sometimes, yeah, they'll let you go in there because if you've been told no and you still choose not to listen and go there anyway, there are realms we're not meant to check out and see. But, we do pop into other places. Hey, Brenda. And check them out or see them, even to go to help others. And, we've talked about, doppelgangers before, and that's what a doppelganger is like if another version of us popped into our timeline here, they would not be familiar with our version of us or the people we know here in our time and space, and they get seen, and the person always reports that, hey, I saw you across the street and I yelled to you, you turned and looked at me but gave me a look like you didn't know who the hell I was and kept walking. Or you sped up even faster, like, it might be some creeper and I'm your best friend, what gives? And so in that case, it's another version of another fragment of your consciousness is coming into another existence you're having somewhere else. And, but you're not going to be familiar with who that version of you knows in that time and space unless you tune into it with intention to learn them. But, the circumstances of that lifetime is going to be completely different than this one, and vice versa. But you can still pop in to help that person during dream time and so forth. Are astral travel and portals like each other? Yes, except with portals. So portals also can allow other energies to cross through back and forth between the physical plane that we live on and their whatever home turf is for them. And some people, when they astral travel, just choose to stay within the physical plane. So they may go and kind of remote view into their best friend's house and say, some people even have tried the experiment, put something that on your nightstand tonight. Don't tell me what it is. And they go and see it through astral travel and then report back the next day and identify it correctly what's on their nightstand, when they would have no other way of knowing that unless they caught a glimpse of it. Sometimes people just travel to other places within the physical plane, and others skip over that altogether and go elsewhere. So more of it happens when you're sleeping and dreaming than not. So, and whereas a lot of people who try astral travel, it's an intentional thing that you're setting out to attempt to do versus it happening spontaneously. Well, like in dream time or what have you. Like I have never ever successfully managed to astral travel with like, okay, I'm gonna lay down and try this now. That's never ever worked for me, but it's been similar to a lucid dream, except the awareness that it was my guides taking me somewhere to show me something I needed to see for whatever reason. I mean, the first time it happened, it completely blew my mind and freaked me the hell out. But after that, I knew what to expect and wasn't as scared by it as the first time because I'd never experienced it before. But now it's kind of like old hat when it happens. Like, oh, okay. No. Let me put my salt on. My sinuses are packing up tonight here. Go. So portals are, like I said, it allows energy to transport from another place into the physical realm or vice versa, from the physical realm to another place. And sometimes other beings can get kind of stuck here where, they went through one without realizing what they were doing per se, and it closed on them and they don't know how to reopen it themselves. I've experienced that with them as well. There are, when you're in a higher energy place, then they can get opened without intention. And at that point, unless you're able to tune into what's there, you don't know what you're dealing with unless you can tune into the energy of it. But you got to go forward without fear of it too. I got tasked to close one once. Well, I was doing my medicine woman training, and I had no clue what I was doing, had never had any experience doing it before, and was just told to trust my gut. You'll know what to do in the moment. Sure, I will. Yeah, about that. But I did, and I managed to close it. And just that was my first experience on trusting my own intuition and listening. Yes, it's the weather, I know, and it's been down into the cold spell side of things here. So, but so he's been kicking on more because it's like wind chill below zero and stuff here. So it's constantly running. I did only take one Sudafed at my last medication time because I didn't want to overdry myself, but obviously I could use two. Let me take a second one real quick. Sudafed is my friend. Only decongestant that works for me. So, that's where I left off on the notes. All right, so spirit traffic, especially in one's home, is often startling to say the least. But if a portal is in an area covered with negative energy where, you have a lot of tension, you have a lot of fighting going on and discord, and you're residing in a more lower energetic vibrational place, then you could be more likely to have portals open up in that space because of your environment. When there's all that chaos, you can pop them open. But some refer to them as being demons, especially depending on your religious beliefs. But personally, I think that they're just either lower energy beings, and it's whether they're considered good or bad depends on your belief system. And you can create and assign fear to them based on your own fear of the unknown that can make them be seen as evil when in reality they're not. It is been very cold. Yes, absolutely. I just went back out today to let my truck run for 20 minutes to make sure the battery stays charged. So you can cleanse a space to close the portal by using sage and sweetgrass, which attracts only positive energy, and state your intention of what you're trying to do. For safety's sake, you can draw a salt circle around yourself if that's what you're more comfortable doing. I think my dog wants to astral travel and thinks I'm on the way to get there. She always goes to the other room when I rub her belly. She won't leave me alone since I put the show on. I, or do they naturally do it on their own? That's a possibility too. Never know. So if you are so inclined to do so, you can use salt as the line of protection around yourself before attempting to close one. But again, evil beings and demons and all that stuff. I'm not saying again that demons don't exist, but they are not what they're often viewed as being. They're just interdimensional beings. There's higher level ones and lower level ones based on their energy, but kind of the same way as with people. You get those of us who are high vibrational people naturally and work with energy more than not, and those that are just negative Nellies all the time, no matter what you say and do. Well, it's the same way with them, and it's just how they act here in the physical plane doesn't work with the law of physics and gravity and all those other things that can be chaotic, but they're acting as they would from where they're from is normal. It's been my experience anyway. And any evilness that you give them or fear only feeds them and feeds the view of them because you don't understand what you're dealing with, then yeah, but it's a fear-based thing based off of your foundational beliefs, I believe. So you can use salt to encircle yourself if you really choose to, but it's not necessary. You don't have to have it. It's up to the individual what they feel comfortable with. And if you're going to do it before you start trying to close it. And then you can periodically just resage it or stash like a good crystal in the area to help keep the area, quote, clean. Yeah, some act like they're badasses, but again, it's a subjective interpretation of it, Sandy. So you get those that have, uh, based on again people's foundation of beliefs. So if you're raised a Christian or you still hold on to some of those views as your view, or you reside in the middle thick of it and are still actively, openly 100% Christian, but maybe a bit more spiritual in knowledge. You're taught that they're looking around every corner and about Satan and hell and all that stuff. And again, I'm not here to negate someone's foundational beliefs or disrespect them in any way, but that's not been my experience. I love watching your show, but since we moved here, we are only able to get dish internet and keeps cutting up any videos or shows and continues to buffer, hence why I haven't been in here much. And yeah, here I am, and it still continues to cut out and buffer. We are available through other arenas, though, Brenda, in case like you have access to, whether it's YouTube or iHeartRadio, iTunes. We are online at somafusion.com. We're kind of like across every social media platform and radio. Sirius Radio. I mean, we're kind of like everywhere. So if you can't get us in one way, you might be able to through another format, but we're still around. And, we're now like with the Soma Fusion Radio, we are constantly just in a loop of all the different shows playing round the clock. And it can always be heard from the radio station point of view as well. So I'm thinking you might be able to find us in another avenue other than just Facebook if you needed to. Yep, we're on YouTube too. They're both on the Soma Fusion channel on YouTube, and I also have them saved to my personal YouTube channel under Donna Gorton, and then there's a folder in there called Willows, and all the the other episodes since I've been with Soma Fusion are saved in there too. So we are hitherto in yawn as Soma Fusion. So that's all of what the dues for Soma Fusion pay for, is so that we're everywhere. Watch, warm, either way, and get warm while watching. So, um, as far as demons go, also, we live in a third dimension, and it's thought that entities cross over from a fourth dimension vibrational frequency. That the fourth dimension is kind of thought to be like a hallway entrance that they can go on between the different realms. Um, some channeled information says that the fourth dimension has been shrinking, and it now just kind of will jump from the third dimension up to the fifth dimension. So it depends on how you view it. Um, it might warm your heart while you watch. My dog always alerts me to the paranormal activity. It's a kick. I have to admit, most I experience is lovely energy. It's rare that I feel bad energy. I usually nip that in the bud and put the kibosh on it. Yeah, no, and that's the thing, is it really determines on from what standpoint your own vibrational energy field is. So if you live a life of chaos and drama and constant fighting and antagonistic crap in your home and just always that random energy bouncing off the damn walls of chaos, yes, you could pop open portals, and yes, some not so nice things might come through, or that you interpret as not so nice out of fear of not knowing what you're dealing with. But in reality, it doesn't mean they're good or bad per se. It's just here it doesn't work, or they don't belong here, or they're more likely to be interruptive. The cat's the same, yeah. So, um, a vortex is also kind of a portal as well. Your home is chaos and drama free. Yeah, so you should only get good things through and nothing to worry about. And again, whether something is good or bad is also a point of view point, I would say, because again, if you have fear of something because you can't see it to identify it right away and you're too scared to communicate, well, yeah, there's going to be fear of the unknown because you're not seeking to make it known. Anytime I go in to do a remote viewing situation, I lay down the rules of engagement of right now, I'm only here to talk, and I can't be harmed, so don't try. If you come at me, I will defend myself, but let's not make it nasty. And I just am seeking to communicate right now. And then I decide where we're going to go with things from there. But I don't ever go in with fear. Only chaos here is what I'm cleaning. Well, that's to be expected. So a vortex is another kind of portal as well. So what may be our reality in laws and rules of scientific, like like gravity and things like that, it's not going to be the same everywhere that other beings are. They may very well have different laws of physics that they operate on. Okay, Brenda, thanks for popping in anyway. Hopefully you heard what I said about other places that you might be able to watch from or listen from. So what they are doing in their realm, it doesn't work here because the laws of physics are different. When my front door opens and nobody's there, I just tell them to come on in and have a cup of coffee with me. There you go. And so, again, it's whether you look at it with fear or not, allow yourself to reside in a fear-based place because you don't know what you're dealing with, versus just saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to talk to them and see what they say, what I get in here in communication, and feel energetically. I'm going to feel what their energy feels like. And in that's how you kind of figure out what they are. And then it becomes known. So even if you can't see them directly, it doesn't mean you still can't communicate and to tell what you're dealing with. Right? Make sure they close the door behind them. Yep. That's always good. So, according to NASA, there are places where the magnetic field of the Earth connects to magnetic fields of the sun, creating uninterrupted pathways from 93 million miles away. And that's only one view of it, however, but 93 million miles is a huge different distance to cover, but that stays open. I've seen drawings of like artist interpretation of that portal pathway, and it's like almost like a tube, if you will, that kind of comes, covering that whatever area they're viewing it from. But that it is two different places on the earth. So that's also thought another way that they might be able to come through it. NASA says that the magnetic portals are invisible, unstable, and elusive. Um, I think it's slightly different with like energetic paranormal portals versus the magnetic portals can be, but there are a higher incidence of paranormal portals, for lack of a better name for them, energetic portals, in those places than anywhere else. I have several people who come through my home and reported many instances of someone interacting with them. Mostly they felt comforted. Once in a while they feel uneasy. Not everyone feels comfortable talking about the subject. Yep. It's fabulous to have the feedback so I can clear energy we don't want here. Yeah, well, most people, again, depending on their foundation of beliefs, are afraid of it or not, and some will seek to communicate. But even those I know who are as equally gifted as I am can be afraid to actually talk to them. And I'll be like, why? You know as much as I do on how to, so why won't you? And I don't know. I just don't want to. Well, what are you really afraid of? I don't know. I'm not. Okay, well, then what's stopping you? I don't know. Well, then get off your duff and do it then. Like, um, it, it's, and plus the stigma is still there to some degree that if they talk about it, they're going to be thought of as crazy. And they are still in a place of really caring what other people think of them, which I think the further you go on this path, the less that plays an importance in your world of what others think of you, or it becomes a very few people matter as to what their opinion is of you, and the rest can kind of go to hell. So there's 9 proven dimensional planes of existence. The first dimension is only a single dimension of length. The second has both length and width to it. The third dimension, where we all live in the physical plane. The fourth dimension is where what we call spirits live on, which again, to me, I view it more as like a hallway or a way to get here from the other side. So, for example, when I'm doing a reading and I say, okay, it'll take them a minute to get here, and they're finishing what they're doing, whatever, and I may see them coming from a distance, that's really what they're doing, is going kind of through the mini hallway in between here and there. The fifth dimension is considered a crossover point where entities are fully thought to be ascended and crossed over to the other side and be at that point higher beings energetically. But it's also, as we learned and talked about before, you can be in the fifth dimensional consciousness where it's how you conduct your life and how you view things and interact with energy. However, you're still living on the 3-dimensional plane. People already think I'm crazy, wouldn't hurt my reputation. Yeah, there's very few people I care about what they think about me. The 6th dimension is thought to be where clairvoyance happens. The 7th is thought to be where telekinesis can happen, whereby physical things can be influenced without actual physical contact. So could demons be from here? Well, maybe, but again, I don't view them the same way someone who is, say, as a devout Catholic may view them as, or anybody from a firm Christian path, where they may be more spiritually and open than other Christians may be, but they're still, that is their foundation of beliefs, is Christianity. Well, nothing I say or otherwise is going to negate that view for them, and that's the view they were taught and they reside in and believe in. So who am I to change that for them? The 8th plane of perception is kind of like the highest that an entity can evolve to. And yeah, they are misunderstood beings, absolutely. And the 9th dimension is thought to be where God or the higher power or the creator, Yahweh, whatever name you choose to give that energy, is thought to be at, is the 9th dimension. So any questions on all of that? I have to say some of my son's friends have been freaked the fuck out after spending time here. I love hearing secondhand stories. The brave return. Yeah, my old house was like that. The house I lived in when I had my daughter, and full of activity. And after a while, we just kind of accepted it, and knew that it wasn't anything bad, so we didn't worry about it. So, any questions on the idea of portals and other dimensions that can be accessed through them? So they're not like literally like you see on Stargate. I mean, I suppose they could be, where you can have like a frame that they open inside of, but it doesn't have to be. And normally it's more of just the energy there feels different, where you just know or you don't know. It's one of those types of things. I think I sense them more than actually seeing it as like a physical whirlwind of energy as portrayed on TV. Nope. Cool. All right. So onward to Black Eyed Children. Go. So this was presented back in March of 2018, taking us, or March 18th of 2018, taking a few steps back, or I meant, might have been into 2019. Yeah, I think we just crossed over into 2019. So March 18th of 2019. Portal question. I noticed when I move and the place has two mirrors near each other, a portal is usually there. Is that common? Yes, because they can come in one. So I want to say I did a follow up show to this original one somewhere along the lines. And in there, it talked about how one is always like an entrance point and one is a exit point, and that you if you're going to go closing them, don't ever close the exit point ones. You can close the open ones that kind of they come in through, but don't ever close the ones they leave from. And they're not always one and the same. Yeah, and so you can, I mean, they don't need two mirrors to come and go. That can be the place where they come in and out of, but you don't have to have two mirrors in order to it for it to act as a portal. It's just in the case where there are two mirrors near each other, one is usually the entrance point, one is the exit. Yes, that's what I'm saying, is that, you know, when you have two near each other, one is an entrance, one is an exit. So it's about vibing it out, which is which. And you don't ever want to close the exit ones. Yep. Your information is spectacular. I always love hearing about the tools you offer us. Manage the energies. May give us pause. Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. And, you know, everybody's experiences with them are going to be a little bit different. And, you know, I just know that, you know, someone, I was talking about this in book group the last week when we met, that, you know, someone once said to me that they didn't know I was a stitcher. And I said, oh, what do you mean by I'm a stitcher? Because I hadn't ever been referenced as such before. And they said, well, someone who can affect the fabric of space and time. And I said, well, yeah, I do what I do, but I don't know necessarily how I do it. I just do it. And there was then a discussion of, you know, maybe I'm more, they viewed being a shaman being different than a medicine woman, which in many circles they're one and the same. But there are those that hold them in separate titles, if you will, and that makes me more of a shaman than a medicine person in their eyes. And I'm okay. I'm just Donna. Some of it's trial and error along the way, and others, yes, or it's combining research and then going and trying it myself. So it's only from my perspective at all times. And hey, if you find something that also works for you, then awesome. And what may work for me isn't going to always work for everybody else. So, but I'm glad that you enjoy the show. And we, of course, always love seeing you show up. So, Black Eyed Children. So, what are they? This was actually only the 18th episode of the show, too. So, what are Black Eyed Children? So, a contemporary legend supposes that paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 to 16. You told me using a necklace how to determine an exit point and enter. Yep. And that for you, that necklace is how you communicate, and it's much like a pendulum is, and so it's no different, and there's no reason you can't use that if that's what works for you. It's a matter of what direction it turns. And so yes, you can use like a pendulum to determine exit and entrance points and vibing the energy of it to tie. They do feel differently as well from one another, but you always want to leave the exit ones open and only close the entrance ones if you're going to do anything with them. So black-eyed children, they have pale skin and black eyes, often allegedly seen hitchhiking or on the doorstep of homes. So the history of these kids, again, there is no hard evidence of them. No photographs have ever been taken or videos or otherwise. It's really more based on personal experiences reported, and tabloids have been reporting on them since the 1980s from people's personal experiences. Now that said, not everything that happens in a tabloid is like made up news. It's more of what is seen as fringe science in them. And more people are saying, okay, so what is shown happening in tabloids is actually much more accurate information than what is presented across mainstream news sources. So something to keep in mind. Use your discretion. So most people point to the source of them as a 1996 postings made by a Texas reporter by the name of Brian Bethel on a, quote, ghost-related mailing list relating to alleged encounters with black-eyed children. To date, he does maintain that his encounters are legit and he didn't make them up, but that was considered or thought to be the origin of, like, the first person who went public with stories of it. Author and paranormal investigator David Weatherly, he wrote a book called Black-Eyed Children, and he talks about an incident of black-eyed adult appearing to some kids in Chile in 1956. So stories of it go further back than 1996 for sure, and happen in other countries as well. It's not just something that is in the United States. Remember those paintings of the 1970s of the big-eyed kids? I had a couple. I wonder if they were based on black-eyed kids. It might have been. Because again, there is no solid 100% evidence pointing to what these are. I've never personally encountered one to tune into their energy to determine it. So I don't know for sure myself exactly what they are, because it's all speculation, because it's based off of personal reports of them and not any hard evidence to say, oh, here's an actual photo of one, or hey, I recorded this video of them. It's all personal stories, which are very subjective things. So we don't know. So it's speculated that they feed off of fear response from people, and it's been speculated as to whether they're alien hybrid kids or demons, of course, or what they actually want has never actually been revealed by someone who comes in contact with them out of fear response. Like, they don't let it get that far to show what their true intentions are. They cut off contact, or they get the hell away from them as fast as possible, because everybody reports it just doesn't feel right, and that they were terrified and didn't know why, that it didn't make sense, things like that. And they just put distance between them and the kids, and then they magically disappear. So are they interdimensional beings? Are they alien hybrids? Who knows? We don't know. Results of alien and human breeding, it's a possibility. Where they're more residing in a different dimension and pop in and out like interdimensional beings is kind of what I'm inclined to think of if I were to classify them. So they're thought to also cause illness related, that is like the symptoms of it is related to kind of like someone who gets exposed to radiation. Problem is, more people want to remain anonymous in order to kind of like avoid being ridiculed by telling these stories. So that takes away from being able to follow up with them, first of all, in subsequent interviews for more information on their experiences, or to track them kind of long term. Hey, was it just this one time you encountered them? Did you experience any illnesses based off the interaction of them, or what have you? Because they're afraid of being thought of as crazy, so they stay anonymous, and you can't follow up with the source in that point. So then the story is just a story. Are we able to see their eyes if we are with them? Yes, and they are reported as being just black and no, visible uh, cornea around the eye. It's just all black, like fully black. Yes, absolutely. And so, like, nobody knows with those cases as to what subsequently happened. There are other stories of people who have encountered them, as far as like the alien hybrid theory goes, considering like the gray aliens and how big their eyes are has been compared to the size of the eyes on these children. But again, there is no evidence of it. Oh, I see what I did in the first. Okay, so the first time I reported this or we did this in the show topic, I was reading about the encounters using my other tablet, which was active at the time. I mean, I could access the same resources now, but it would mean stepping out of chat to do it. So you guys let me know if you want me to, and I can go grab some of them. But that's my second device now, is my phone, which is what I monitor chat in. So if you guys want me to, I can go pull some. But I mean, I know the gist of some of them. So there's never been anybody who's ever said, oh, come on in and, stay a while. I think the closest encounter I ever remember hearing about was this, like, they showed up in the dead of winter, they weren't dressed appropriately, and the person went to get them something like warm to drink or whatever, and um they ended up like going to fix them something, and when they came back, that their husband had gotten sick and had closed the door on them or something. But then there was a lot of illnesses in them after that. So you guys are saying yes. Okay, so let me jump out of chat, and I will come back to it, of course, when I'm done. But let me pull it up here in a search. Let's see. I know when I see them, so just bear with me for 1 second, and I will find them. And of course, like, there's been movies made that have kind of played into it a lot too, with the Village of the Damned. They were thought to be black-eyed children, even though they weren't presented as having black eyes, but the powers that they had were thought to be black-eyed children, possibly. And there was also a movie, Black-Eyed Children. Let Me In was a movie that was out as well. Okay, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Okay. Okay, so 19 chilling stories of the black-eyed children. Unless this is, oh, it's just on radio. That wasn't what I wanted. My fault. It's just a radio show that wasn't. They used to have another website about it that was similar in name. I will find it. I mean, I know the gist of most of the stories that are known about it. Let's try this one. I've certainly read up on all of them in as far as like having talked about it in the first research for the show for the first time. All right, so creepy stories about black-eyed kids have several things in common. Now, this is from 9 Terrifying Stories About the Black-Eyed Children by Lira Radford. This was written back in 2019. Um, okay. First, it seems to take a while for people to notice the children's eyes. You would think that would be the first thing you see, but somehow the children seem to be able to shield their eye color even from those looking directly at them. Another common theme is the instant feeling of unease and dread that people experience the moment they get close to one of these creepy children. They don't need to see the eyes to know there's something wrong with them. The mind may not be able to immediately process what exactly is going on with black-eyed children, but in most of these stories, survival instincts kick in pretty quickly, and for many of these witnesses is a primal, full-body experience of terror. Close that one up, all right. Yeah. Okay, the children tried to get a young man to walk them home in 1950. One of the earliest recorded sightings of black-eyed children was back in 1950. A 16-year-old named Harold was strolling up the street to his Virginia home when he noticed a boy leaning on a nearby fence. Harold said hello, but received no response. He turned to leave. Then the mysterious boy finally spoke. I want to go to your house. You're going to walk me up to your house. That was when Harold noticed the boy's eyes. They were pitch black. All his instincts screamed, run, yet he instead just stood there. Then, as if reading Harold's mind, the boy said, now don't you run away from me. You're going to walk me up to your house. That was enough to spring Harold into action. He booked it out of there and claimed he heard the child let out a scream of a bobcat, but he wasn't willing to turn around to be sure. The account goes on to reveal how Harold's parents actually believed his tale, and his father went out with his gun in hand looking for what he believed was a devil. The black-eyed child was gone, but Harold's mother demanded that he go to the local priests to be safe. So again, that Christianized view of the devil stuff in there. Children stopped a journalist and demanded a ride. Okay, so this is the guy I mentioned before who, Brian Bethel, who had written like the first article about it. So journalist Brian Bethel of Abilene, Texas, is credited with being the first person to post an online account of the black-eyed children phenomenon. It all began back in 1996. Bethel was sitting in his car writing out a check he intended to drop off at a nearby internet provider's office. He was startled by the sound of knocking on his window and looked up to see 2 kids. He couldn't figure out why, but a jolt of fear ran through him. They was just kids, but there was something wrong with them. He just couldn't figure out what. He cracked his window just enough to talk with them. The 2 oldest of the boys asked for a ride to their mother's house. He claimed they were going to see a movie, forgot their money, and needed a ride so he could make it back for the movie in time. The movie theater was close enough that Bethel could read the marquee, so he asked the boys what they were going to see. Mortal Kombat was the reply. Bethel could read the marquee himself, and he knew that the movie had already started an hour ago. Also, there was just something wrong with the pair. The way that they spoke wasn't natural, and they didn't sound as young as they looked. Just let us in and we'll be gone before you know it. We'll go to our mother's house. Everything the older boy said sent shivers down Bethel's spine, but then he saw it. The pitch black eyes, lacking any real substance or soul. Bethel didn't even try to hide his terror. Come on, mister, we won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We don't have a gun. The more he spoke, the more Bethel was sure he had to get out of there. He threw his car into reverse, the boy still yelling to be let in, and sped off. He gave one quick glance behind him, but saw nothing. The black-eyed boys simply vanished before he'd even made it out of the parking lot. The children menaced a gas station attendant during a power outage. A gas station attendant in Northeast Louisiana had a terrifying account in November 2012. The gas station was creepy enough to begin with at 3 a.m., but when the power went out, led by the light of his cell phone, the attendant was able to get the generators going, but the backup lighting was dim and only lit up certain areas, like the cash area and the parking lot, while the rest of the isolated establishment was cloaked in black. In that darkness, he noticed movement. 3 children on bikes were headed his way, which this is the only report I've ever heard of them being on bikes. Usually they're just showing up at someone's doorstep. They stood at the door and stared at the attendant. He felt creeped out. But they were just kids, and it was way too late for them to be out. He opened the door and asked if they were okay. The young girl asked to use the phone, but as he handed his cell over to her, he realized that her eyes were all black. "No, I need the real one." She pointed at the landline instead. The thought of letting her inside sent chills up his spine. He shouted at all of them to leave as he slammed and locked the door. The children stood there a bit longer, silently staring at him through the glass with their solid black eyes. Then they got on their bikes and disappeared back into the darkness. The next morning, the attendant was eager to go through the surveillance footage. Unfortunately, the power outage had cut the cameras off, and they didn't boot back up with the generator. He had nothing to prove the events of the night before even took place. The next one is the children stalked an engineer through his security cameras. An engineer working the night shift for a data center in Ohio had a creepy exchange and posted his tale anonymously as noetic. It was around 5 a.m. on July 13, 2010. Noetic was taking a smoke break outside when he noticed 2 teenage boys standing motionlessly and staring at him from across the street. Though he felt somewhat unnerved, he finished his smoke and went back inside. 10 minutes after heading inside, the intercom buzzed. Noetic checked the monitors, and there they were. The 2 boys had made their way over to his building and were now staring into the surveillance cameras like they could see him through it. Through the speaker, he asked what they wanted. They said nothing but motioned for him to come outside. He hit the speaker button again and told them to go away. They didn't leave, but continued to stare into the camera as if they were watching Noetic as he worked. After a short while, Noetic went to the door and chased them off. Right before opening the door, he saw them through the one-way glass and was horrified to see their eyes were completely black. He knew he had to open up the door to tell him to go away, and he decided he'd call the police if he had to. As if the boy read his mind, the moment the door opened, he said, "That will not be necessary, sir. We simply need to use your phone. Can you let us in?" Noetic was not about to fall for that nonsense. He pulled out his cell phone and threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. He made sure the door was locked and went back into the monitor. Only one boy was still staring at the camera. Then he realized the second boy had positioned himself out back and was staring into the camera there. By 6 a.m., both boys had moved into a blind spot with no camera coverage. Noetic waited for them to reappear, but they simply vanished. The police arrived not long after, but both boys were gone. Scroll to continue reading. Okay, we're trying to scroll. Oh. All right. A couple let the children into their home and suffered terrible illnesses afterward. This is the one I had mentioned before leaving chat. In January 2016, a Vermont woman reported that she actually let black-eyed children into her home. A little over a year prior, a blizzard was raging over the world outside her door. So she was very surprised to hear a loud knock on it. Figuring someone probably crashed their car trying to navigate the weather, she made her way to the door and peeked outside to see who was there. There was no car. She described a feeling of dread wash over her for reasons she couldn't understand. Then she heard a banging on the window, and let me see if I left off. Sorry, I just lost my place. Um, she picked up the window. The banging continued, so she decided to wake her husband and to let him answer it instead. Two small children were on the other side of the door, and they were not dressed appropriately for the storm. The woman and her husband let the poor little girl inside, or little girl and little boy inside, despite the great sense of unease their presence made them feel, and they regretted it almost instantly. One cat hissed while the other three hid, unusual behavior for them all, and it didn't seem to matter what the woman asked them. What happened? Are you lost? Want some cocoa? The answer was always the same. Our parents will be here soon. She made them cocoa anyway and returned with the mugs. That's when she noticed their eyes. They were completely jet black with no whites at all, just giant black pupils. They asked for the bathroom and she directed them to it. Then everything happened all at once. Her husband's nose started bleeding. The power went out, and as she rushed to get a tissue, she was confronted by both children staring at her from the hall. Our parents are here. They walked out the front door. She watched the creepy children get into a black car with two very tall men in suits. They left. Within months of the encounter, three of their four cats went missing. The fourth, the one that had hissed, was found in a pool of blood, dead from a hemorrhage. Her husband's nosebleeds continued, and he was eventually diagnosed with skin cancer, despite spending very little time outdoors. As the woman began suffering from chronic nosebleeds as her husband initially had, and her health began slowly deteriorating. She is sure that it is because of the encounter with the black-eyed children. Next story, the black-eyed children caused a fatal car accident. John Northwood was heading to his car on the third floor of a parking garage when one of the guys from the conference he just attended, Doug, asked him to drive around the block a few times. He said there were some freaky-looking kids hanging around his car and was hoping to kill some time while waiting for them to just wander off. John let Doug in and they started cruising. When he neared his car, John saw the group Doug was talking about and agreed they were creepy. Three kids, two boys and a girl, all gothed out. The girl looked about 15 and the boys around 14 and 10. They were intense, but John described it as if he really needed to look at them. He stopped driving. The kids maneuvered around his car and the youngest one said, "It's scary out there all alone. We just want to ride home." One said Doug had offered a ride home, which he denied, saying John felt as if his heart was going to erupt from his throat as adrenaline raced through him. Doug said he was getting out of the car. As soon as he reached for the handle, it was like the children got older somehow, and he saw their eyes were solid black. No pupils, no iris, nothing, just black. John threw the car into reverse, and both drove backwards about 60 feet. The kids began to pursue them, so John took the car around the lot's corner, going around 30 miles per hour. He felt they would die if he let those kids get into the car. He sped down the 3 floors only to find the oldest boy was already at the bottom of the garage when they came out. They sped past him out of the garage. When John turned around, the boy was gone, and so was that menacing feeling that had been building inside him since making contact with those kids. They waited 10 more minutes before going back to get Doug's car. The black-eyed children were nowhere in sight, and it was then that Doug admitted that he had given the younger kid a ride earlier, but felt scared when he saw the older child. Upon leaving the garage for the second time that night, the menacing feeling returned. John was behind Doug's car, watching helplessly as he misjudged the time it would take to get through the intersection on a yellow light. Doug was struck by a truck and died instantly. The police arrived, and John gave his report, feeling uneasy the whole time. Only then did he look around and see the black-eyed children standing 2 blocks away, staring at him. Oh, well, this one I don't think I'm familiar with. A man had sex in the black-eyed children's home and died shortly after. This tale was posted online by a friend of the victim. It was while on a trip through Arcata, California, that this anonymous man stopped for a drink and ended up hitting it off with the attractive woman running the bar. After a bit of drinking and getting to know each other, she offered the traveler a place to stay for the night, and he drunkenly accepted. He left his car at the bar and went back with her to her place. As they pulled into the front, that's when the unease crept in. He wasn't sure why, but her home creeped him out. She started to creep him out as well. He claims she began to seem inhuman to him. This didn't stop him from going inside with her, though. We know what was on his mind. After the woman had fallen asleep, he got up to get water. During his trek to the kitchen, he realized her house was full of children. They weren't normal children either. They were quiet and creepy and wandering the house aimlessly at 2 a.m. He had a horrible feeling about them even before he noticed their eyes. Completely black, all of them. There was no conversation, no attack. He was just faced with the black-eyed children and then sent off on his merry way the next day. A little over a month after his strange experience, the man, described as being very healthy, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of bladder cancer. He died 6 months later, believing it was those black-eyed children that were responsible. A young woman returned home to find the children waiting in her yard. 18-year-old Karis Holdsworth was heading home to her apartment after a night out. It was just before 11 p.m. She noticed there were 2 teenager boys she'd never seen before just standing in her yard. This put her on edge a bit, so she reached in her purse to make sure her pepper spray was readily available. With the firm grip on her only weapon, she attempted to sneak past them unnoticed. No such luck. They both turned simultaneously. She instantly felt a primal terror and gripped the canister still in her purse. As if they knew what she was hiding in her bag and what she was thinking, the older one said, "No need for that. We just want to borrow your phone, miss." It was then that Holdsworth noticed their eyes. Pitch black, no white at all. She felt her flight or fight response kick into gear, and she darted for her door, fumbling for her keys as the black-eyed boys followed her. "Please, miss, my mother won't be happy if she doesn't know where we are." Every instinct in her knew that she had to get away from them. Part of her felt a twinge guilty and considered helping them, but that feeling was quickly buried in the deep sense of dread that was steadily washing over her. She made it inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it. With a sigh of relief, she headed for her kitchen, but then came the knock. She decided to ignore it. They knocked again, and that feeling of dread began to make its way into her body. She decided a brave, silent peek through the peephole. They were there, staring at her through the peephole like they could see inside. "Just let us in to use the phone," one said. "We won't hurt you. We have no weapons to hurt you with." Holdsworth ordered them to leave her alone. She made sure everything was locked tight and a friend to come over. The boys didn't leave until the friend showed up, who had the same overwhelming sense of danger when she arrived. Holdsworth soon moved away after that and now always checks her peephole before opening the door. A Marine was visited twice by the same child. At 6'7" and 260 pounds, stop crawling on me, this United States Marine was his own looming and intimidating force of nature, but that didn't stop a black-eyed kid from testing him. He was in the barracks of a Texas base where he lived and settling in for the night when he heard a sharp knock on the door. Assuming it was his neighbor, the Marine made his way to the door. Standing outside was a boy of about 17 years old. The Marine asked him what he was up to, and almost hungrily, the boy asked to be let inside to use the phone. Nothing but sleep and peace on his mind, the Marine said no and directed him to the service building across the parking lot and closed the door. He knocked again. Irritated, the Marine went to the window, intending to yell at him, but just looking at the thin, gaunt kid gave him the creeps. That's when he noticed his eyes. They were black as coal. Once again, the child asked to be let in with a creepy, predatory smile. Still determined to assert his authority, the Marine ignored his fear and said he'd force the kid to leave if he had to. He momentarily turned to grab his phone, and by the time he turned around, the child was gone. He couldn't shake the feeling he had seen him before and that all of this was familiar. Then it hit him. He had watched his brother have a similar interaction once. 2 years earlier, while still in high school and living in Pennsylvania, he had worked the night shift at a gas station. One night, while having a smoke out front with his brother, they saw some kid walking across the 4 lanes towards them. His brother asked him if he needed anything, and it was the same request. He wanted to use the phone. The brother said the phone was backed by the register and no one was allowed to use it. The brothers went inside, but the strange kid didn't take no for an answer. He stood in front of the shop, knocking on the window until the brother chased him off the bat. But when he came back, he said the kid was pale and had black eyes. It was the same kid. So there you have it, 9 creepy tales of encounters with black-eyed children. And give me a second to come back in the chat. There we go. And where's my chat? Okay, here we are. I'm back. So let me go back and see some of your comments here. I ought to find the TikTok I made on New Year's. I was eating black-eyed peas, and our dog was in the kitchen. I go, Kato's a black-eyed dog. He isn't getting my black-eyed peas. Okay, plug this into. That peephole is golden. It is. I'm humming the Twilight Zone theme song. Me too. I had to find, okay, that was Mary's response. I must pop back upward. They have to be aliens. Well, it's unknown. I mean, the one that was seen with, quote, parents with the very tall men in suits, could those have been the Men in Black type of guys? Perhaps, we don't know what they are. And yes, it could be, mixed with our DNA. It's just completely unknown what they are. I don't think that they're demons or anything, but what they are, I don't know. I haven't had the opportunity. Like if I had an actual picture of one, I could tune in and tell you what it is, or, where they're from, or what, the gist of them is, but there isn't any actual photographs of them, like I said. So hard to say. But yeah, it's unknown. So, I mean, as far as the reports of illness, other than that one story of weird health stuff happening while they were having the interaction of the husband and wife team, who were, like the husband got the nosebleeds and stuff right out there on site, and the cat flipped out and then later was found in a pool of blood, whatever. That one is the most directly related to illnesses stemming or related to or similar to radiation poisoning. But the other stuff, I mean, that's kind of hard to draw the parallels realistically between, anybody can carry a cancer gene and have it get triggered and develop cancer. But I think that because that we naturally look for a reason why when we find out we're terminally ill with something to pin it on, and that being like the weirdest encounter someone might have had. Yeah, I could see where it'd be a logical thing to say, oh, that's what it did it to me, that's what gave it to me, without really having anything to base it on. So I don't know that there is actually a direct correlation between the illnesses experienced and them getting sick with, or their encounters with the black-eyed kids. Right. I don't know what the motivation would be. However, if it is some form of radiation poisoning, which has never been proven or even presented as a full-on theory, then is it a result of whatever their makeup is? Yeah, maybe. I mean, but again, it's all speculation. Yeah, there are a type of shadow people that can make you sick. Yeah, that's all I can think of, is that I think a lot of it could be coincidental with, you get a terminal illness diagnosis. Yeah, you want something to blame, of course, like what the hell? And so that being the most significant thing that may have happened in your life, that's the cause, like the superstitious belief thing that people can get. But it's like I said, that one husband and wife team where, yes, they were experiencing symptoms right then and there in the presence of the kids. Well, yeah, that's going to give you more pause to think about it, because it's right then and there in the moment when it happened that he got the nosebleeds. And it obviously wasn't a common thing where he had an issue with nosebleeds. So, and then she's, within a short period of time, developed very similar symptoms as her husband had. So, yeah, that one kind of gives me pause to wonder. But as far as the rest of them, shaky ground. But I don't know. I don't validly know what they are, because there isn't anything for me to tune into to determine and vibe it out energetically. And that's kind of what I would do if if someone says, I have a black-eyed children in my home, I've seen it, or it comes to my house such and such a time periods, could I go and remote view that and tune into their energy there to determine what they are? Absolutely no reason why I shouldn't be able to. That said, just from a story of someone else's viewpoint of their experience, which is a very subjective thing, I can't dive into that one. But that is an option, and it is, I mean, just that article I posted the other day about all the different medical experimentations that the government has done on people without their knowledge. And it is thought that they are in cahoots with some different alien races as a possibility. Then could it be something that is created? Yeah, maybe. I don't discount anything because I don't have enough evidence to go on. But they are creepy and they are interesting, and I would like to know more about them. But they're just, like I said, those experiences are very, those span what, a 75-year period of time. And that's not even counting, because there have been stories also of experiences happening overseas, like in India, in Vietnam, in different, like Chile and places like that. So I don't know. Right. But then, even then, who's to say if the picture would show up if they took a picture? Because those cameras didn't record anything other than, I mean, the guy could see them on him, but it didn't record their presence. And then they went off camera. So that didn't help anything either. But I know the case too of that husband and wife team who experienced, well, not team, but, married couple who had that experience. They did report after they disappeared, they did go out and look around in the snow, and there were no footprints leading up to their doorway or otherwise. So that kind of made them pretty spooked out too. Are they always invisible though? Not always. Sometimes they hide in plain sight. And it depends if they're energetic vampires or not too. I don't have one. If I ever ran into one, I'd be screwed. Yeah, absolutely. Most of us would be. I can see, there are those situations where that fight or flight response in us, we sense before we see. We sense the creep factor of a situation, of a location. We're picking up on the energy that's present and the time before necessarily we have visual evidence to tie with it of why we feel creeped out. So, anybody who is insensitive to anything intuitive would, I would think, pick up on that energy to be creeped out by something in a mirror, but on camera. Um, oh, the vampires thing. Yeah, like I said, you can have those who are, vampire lore had to come from somewhere, is all I will say on that. Then there are those cosplay ones that walk around pretending they are. Then there are those that validly drink blood from a willing partner. And then there's energetic vampires that suck off your energy without permission because they don't know they're doing it. And those are just like you and me, except they don't know they're doing it. So it's unknown what they are. There's not enough information to really formulate a valid theory of what they are, just that all these experiences exist of alleged encounters. So it's got to be something, but just what that something is, we may never know. One more unexplained oddity of life and the world around us. So you have to elaborate. Let me know the vampires might lie. Oh yeah, no, I've had them come into the show before and start to drain me, and by the time I recognize they're doing it, it's kind of like I'm halfway in the middle of it, and I'm like, okay, this is not mine. As my eyeballs start rolling in the back of my head, and I usually have to have a private conversation with them on how to block that from doing it, and it's rarely done with intention. Now that said, there are those that do, and that's a no-no, but digital cameras don't use mirrors. Okay. Well, yes, and Sandy, the other Sandy got impacted as well that night. So, it happens. But we have had random people come in and, they pull off of me and I have to kind of, yes, they do sneak up on you. And I mean, I'm well protected and they're not trying to hurt me, which is where I think it sneaks past my protection because I'm not aware of it, but until it's kind of already hitting me. And I mean, I can shut it off easy enough. It just takes a minute. But yeah, see, Sandy Griffin got affected that night too. I mean, he was different. He knew what he was doing. I called him out publicly on air with what he was doing, and he still didn't stop, and which is a huge no-no. And so he had his own thing to consequences to deal with because of that situation. Not from me, but from someone else I know. So test tube babies are done. So why not everything else? Let's blame it on aliens. That's very possible. I could have given us the idea. I don't know. I, it's hard to say. Like I said, I don't have enough information to formulate an opinion on the black-eyed children as to what they could be. Anything is fair game at this point because so little, there is no hardcore evidence of even a photograph to say, here's what I saw, you know, just people's intuition, which obviously I say trust that all the time, but it's still not like a hardcore thing people can point at. Be good in there, Leela. So that covers the three topics for tonight. So next week, unless somebody else has something else they want me to cover, what we have on the topic table, so to speak, for this notebook anyway, is you do elementals, time travel, and angels and demons, and the Nephilim. I'd probably combine the Nephilim with angels and demons. Yes, Children of the Corn. And that one episode of the original Star Trek show where it had the Children of Tomorrow, is I think the name of the episode. I wonder if they would even show up on your camera. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. They're more energetic beings coming into the physical plane. They might not. And it may only be maybe you have highly intuitive people experiencing them, not realizing that they're not really in physical form, maybe. I don't know. But so are you guys good with those topics for next week? Elementals, time travel, angels and demons, and I, like I said, kind of throw into the mix the Nephilim, just because it's kind of interrelated with the whole angels thing. Possibly. Like I said, I don't, I don't have enough information to really say yes or yay or nay to any one thing, so I don't negate any of it because I don't have enough evidence. Yeah, so okay, so then that'll be it for next week. We'll do elementals, time travel, angels, demons, and the Nephilim. Just kind of throw them all in there, the Nephilim, because again, they're kind of said to be the offspring of angels, which they're not. But that's, we'll get into that next week. All right. Well, then that sounds like a plan for next week then. And as far as I know for now, the book group is still Wednesday night. Like I said, I will let you guys know if I happen to have something come up that is a unavoidable thing that needs changing. But for now, it'll still be Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, Mary. Great show. Thanks so much, Donna. You always bring to the table for us. Nephilim for me. I'm sure that spelling is off. Not too far off. It just doesn't have an E at the end. Yeah, there are lots of people have elementals in their backyard. Absolutely. Stacy does. She's not here tonight for some reason, but yeah, she's got a bunch of them surrounding her property. Many people do who live, in a more natural environment, not the city or whatever, like a little more rural outward. Yeah, a lot of people have they have elementals and don't even realize it. Oh, you are here, Stacy. Okay. Well, I was just mentioning you as you obviously just heard. But yeah, she's got a bunch of elementals in her yard, and they are a thing. Yep, Tanya has fairies, which is going to be the subsequent topic coming up after next week's shows. Then fairies is one of the topics on the list after that. So I would obviously probably repost that video of the fairies that Tanya had filmed. That even the most skeptical people weren't sure, like they couldn't negate it as what being that. I think the ball of light I saw was an elemental. It was definitely not ball lightning. It rarely is ball lightning, but are you sure it wasn't an orb of some kind? Thought I saw the green man the other day. Wow. Yes, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Yep, you're coming in as we're ending. Sorry you missed. If you did miss it all, maybe you're just quiet the whole time, but normally you say hey if you're here. So thank you all for coming. And so the next show will be, the 21st. What does that say? Oh, it's President's Day. No big deal. It wasn't an orb. It wasn't. Well, orbs are intelligent because they're spirit energy. So that's intelligent. Ozzy says it's ball lightning all the time. Yeah, well, we know the opinions of that. So we'll leave it at that. I won't delve into that. Too bad it was pre-cell phones. Yeah, I mean, I've never known anybody who has recorded elementals before. Not solidly enough to say that it's an elemental. I see them when I tune in, but you too, Ted, are coming in at the end of the show. See how you are. We've been on for 2 hours now, buddy. Good to see you again, but yeah, we're just wrapping up. So replay, I guess it'll have to be. Yeah, we start at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So anyway, you've been quiet. See, she's been sneaking in and skulking around. I spy with her little eye. At work on break. Gotcha. So that'll be the topics for next time around then. And book group as usual, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday night, the 16th. And so I will see those who attend book group then. I mean, intelligent in a physical form moving around. My hunt will continue. Well, you go, girl. I mean, I do believe that, orbs and stuff are in physical form moving around, but that's just me. they do manifest in a physical plane, and that's how it's just one way that they travel around. But I don't know why some choose that over a shadow form or a partial manifestation or whatever. I don't know the why behind it. I've never really asked, I guess, but I'm sure I could get an answer if I asked. What say you, Timote? Well, what is the reason that some choose to travel via orb, physicality versus a shadow form or otherwise? He said available energy. So the available energy to manifest is what they choose to, or what's available as far as they can are limited by that. Like its movement was moving with intent and weaving around instead of through. Gotcha. I mean, I have seen that before with the ball shaped forms where they are moving with intention, not just zooming past a screen, but moving through a room with intention. So, and she was snowstorm. That would be enough to call on energy to take that form and move around in. Yes, please use the litter box this time, Leela. That was pretty nasty what you did before, girly. I'm just saying. So, anyways, so I will see those of you who are interested Wednesday night for book group, and everybody else around Facebook land as usual. So much love to everybody. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it as always. Wonderful to see everybody who doesn't always make it in normally. And for my hidden sister, Stacy, hiding throughout the show, making her presence known. It's all good. No worries. You know that. So love to all. Have a wonderful rest of the night, and I'll see most of the rest of you Wednesday night. Love you. Good night.